And something magical happens when you turn 40.
Yes, please tell me. I just got a couple years until I get there, so give me this sneak peek.
Oh my God, something magical happens at 40. You learn that what took me so long? What the hell was I thinking? The word no just becomes your favorite word. And you're so unapologetic about it. And then when you hit 50, hell no becomes your
30 is like, I think so, maybe. And
then you keep
40, like, no.
And
Then
50,
hell no.
No.
Welcome to Black Cancer, a podcast about the nuances of our lives as people of color, told through our cancer journeys. I'm your host, Jody Ambiri. And talk about nuances. Our guest on today's episode is Angela Thomas, a nurse, a mother, and a woman of faith who laced up her gloves and kicked cancer in the ass. What I love about being a person of color is our rich tradition of storytelling. It's alive in our communities, and most importantly, it keeps our communities alive. Angela's storytelling grounds us in the value of time. We interrogate the notion of leaving everything up to God and how that works alongside her faith. We talk about her path to diagnosis, the actual logistics of preparing for the worst, learning to say no, our hair, our dreams, and so much more. So much more. You are in for a treat until the very end. Before we get started, just a heads up. This was recorded in December 2020, a time when we were both still really impacted by Dr. Susan Moore's experiences battling COVID-19. We also start with a conversation about one of Angela's patients. Here's my conversation with Angela.
I had a situation at work this week too, actually. And it reminded me of how so very important it is to feel empowered to advocate for yourself in the healthcare arena. It fueled me to make sure that I do what I can to empower people to do that, because if they don't know where to begin or where to start, right? They don't know how to do it and they get lost. And I have a client right now who, because the healthcare system is stringing him along, is going to miss valuable time with family, in my personal opinion, because the healthcare system is not being honest that there's nothing else they can do for him in his cancer journey, right? And in this pandemic, he's in a hospital where there's no visitation, whereas he could be at home on palliative or hospice care, where he could be surrounded by people that love him. And the way that they dangle that carrot is as though it's something else they can offer him, so they won't let go. And it breaks my heart. It really does break my heart.
Is his situation terminal?
Yes.
And he's at the hospital by himself?
Yes. And I made arrangements for his wife to come and see him, but we have to limit it to 2-hour visits. And again, I can't 100% necessarily blame it all on the institution, because what I have learned is that sometimes you can tell people there's nothing else I can do for you, but because they say to you, I'm going to send you here so maybe you can get a little stronger, people kind of hear and interpret that to what they want, right? When I read through the notes, in the notes it says all the different places where the cancer has metastasized to, but the patient is so ill that the body, he just can't tolerate any additional treatment. So offered them the opportunity to go. But even like I tried to explain to his wife, I said, ma'am, even if he was able to participate in a rigorous rehabilitation program, it's nothing else they can give him. So why not just take him home where there's no limitation on visits and you can be with family and I can put things in place to where he has care, 24-hour day care.
Do you think she's accepted?
No, she has not.
Yeah. Because then it's a sense of like, well, if he comes home, that means I'm giving up,
It's
maybe.
real.
Yeah.
Correct. And I really basically, because I know time is precious, and I really just had to say to her, I said, I'm not being rude, but the bottom line is he's dying. He has said countless times, I just want to go home. He said to me, he has said it to our palliative care team, I want to go home. But when she comes in, she'll say, but no, no, no. And so he'll change his mind. So I think for her, he's trying to be strong and he doesn't want it to appear as though he's giving up in her eyes. Because he's when she's not around, he wants to go home. He keeps saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. I just want to be with my family. I just want to be with my family. So it's a really sad situation.
Like, how do you go home with that? Because I'm looking at you now and like, I can see the emotional impact on you. And this is just one patient that you have. Like, how do you hold that?
Oh, wow. Music is very important to me. My spiritual connection is important to me. Those two things are my lifelines. It really is. Yeah. And she initially was not very happy with me when I said what I said to her. And and I said, ma'am, first of all, I'm a survivor. And I know that there's stages, you have denial. But right now, I just feel you don't have the luxury of being stuck in denial. And I don't want you to be sitting in a place regretting anything or saying, why didn't I? He's my patient and I have to advocate for him. And yes, he's your husband and you know him a lot better than I do. But when you're not here, this is what he's saying. And she goes, I just don't believe that. And so, she goes, I'll talk to him when I get there. And of course, she comes in like a windmill in a tornado going, don't you remember we talked about this? And the doctor said that if you could just do the therapy, but you're not there when the therapists go to try to move him and he screams.
She doesn't see that.
And I even asked my colleague, I said, is it that she doesn't see it or she doesn't want to? Because what I did was he's so weak, he can't even dial his phone, right? So what I said to her is bring in Alexa. And that way, he would like to talk to you or whatever, he could just say, Alexa, dial, you know. And so there are oftentimes she's on the phone when the staff is in the room. A lot of time the staff doesn't, nursing staff or physical therapy staff doesn't even realize she's on the phone. And so she has to hear it. Because one day I went in and he was talking to me and I said, you didn't want to get out of bed today? And he goes, no. And then she chimed in through Alexa, and he just kind of looked at me and just shook his head and tear ran down his face. Like, hey, that's your wife, dude.
Like, I can help you with a lot of things, but I can't help you with that.
One. That's on you, dude. That's you. Yeah.
Did you read about the Dr. Susan Moore case?
I did. I just jumped on and did a thing on the way home because what happened was I'd been hearing about it, but I hadn't actually seen it. And on my way home from work, Christmas Eve, I viewed it, and it touched me in a way that I just felt compelled to say something. So I did a IG live about it. And several things bothered me about that. The humanity of it all, number one. Just the basic sheer humanity of it all. Number two, it took me back to when I was battling COVID, and that raspiness in her voice and that inability to really talk and breathe. I remember that it took me back to that place, and how that fear was of, I'm going to stop breathing at any minute, because it was so hard just to catch your breath, right? And how painful that was. So I know what her pain was, right? Because it was very, very painful. And how her pain level had to exceed, in my mind, had to exceed the pain that I was experiencing, because it sounded like at that moment, and being in healthcare a long time, there are certain things you just know from experience. You could just look and hear how just listening to her is like she needed to be intubated, just listening to her, right? And then when she talked about what her scans look like, I'm thinking to myself, and it's going to sound maybe weird to other people, but it's just the reality of it. Where in the hell was the professional courtesy? Like,
Yes, yeah.
there's a professional courtesy that goes in, like when she walked in, and when she said that he said to her, I know you're a physician. It was like mockingly, like, I don't give a damn that you're, so what? Whereas in any other time, when you walk in and you say, I'm a physician, I'm a nurse practitioner, I'm a nurse, it's like the red carpet is rolled out, the C's part, and you get carte blanche. I have gone into healthcare establishments, and I will not say what my profession is, because I don't want to try to take advantage of that if I don't have to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But invariably, it's known, because you know, through conversation, and they'll say, how do you know so much, And then they're like, why didn't you say that? Girl, come on back here. Let me take care. You know what I'm saying? And then the red carpet is rolled out, the C's part, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And so I'm saying to myself, if that happens for me as a nurse, damn, she should have got carte blanche. Like, what the hell? And then it's so obvious at that point to me that it was all about the skin that she was wrapped in,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Like her experience didn't matter. How she felt didn't matter. She has the language to talk to these people in their own language, and they don't want to see it. They don't want to see it because they're looking at her blackness. They're looking at the assumptions of why she's there through that lens, and they can't see a patient who needs serious help. They can't see it.
Yeah, and the thing I said, well, damn, we're screwed.
Oh, yeah.
Because here's the thing, even if she wasn't a doctor, she's a human being first and foremost. So regardless of what her background is, she was a human being who went for medical care. And the first oath that we take is to cause no harm. That's the first one that we take. One of the very first things that I was taught was listen to your patient, right? They failed all of those things miserably. And I don't have all the ins and outs and all the details, but I have no reason to believe that this highly educated woman would find a reason to get on. She basically was screaming for someone to help me, right? So I find no reason that she would get on, make a broadcast like that for no reason other than the fact that she needed help, and she knew that she needed the help. For him to say, oh yeah, I know you're a doctor. It made me think of a conversation I just had the night before with my neighbor who had came over to share with me. I did an episode called,
This is for your podcast?
yes, how to advocate, how to interview for a physician. And she had listened to it and she came over to tell me how grateful she was for the episode, and that how empowered she felt because she had recently gone to a physician. And one of the things the physician asked on the intake was, they asked, about alcohol, drinking, things like that, right? So she said, she answered yes, that she did drink, but she was a social drinker, like for her birthday, anniversary, things
Yeah,
like
a lot
that.
of people are.
She said the doctor response to her was, yeah, right.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah, she said, huh? She said, yeah, well, right. If I'll see when I get your blood work. And I said, well, what does she mean she'll see when she get your blood work? Because unless she's drawing an blood alcohol level,
You can't see nothing.
I said, what is she talking about? I told her, I said, girl, why didn't you get your purse and skedaddle?
Deuces. Exactly.
And she said, when the lab work came back, she said, oh, yeah, you were right. I said, well, first of all, she breached your privacy because unless you give consent for drug or alcohol screening, she didn't have a right to do that. And what made her think that this is a master's, she has a master's degree in education. And I'm not saying that because you're educated that you don't have problems with substance abuse, whatever, but this lady just automatically assumed, oh no, so it's that, again, that's that assumption that if you're wrapped in a certain tone or hue, you're more prone to. But if you look at it from a statistical standpoint, I don't think we're the ones. That's the one thing that's the only favor they gave us about this, with the prescription drug, the Dilaudid and the morphine and all kind of stuff. uh,
You're like,
uh, that's not
that's
us.
not
That's
us.
not us.
It's so funny. So when I was in grad school, I worked at the wellness center, and there was this huge push to change a lot of like kind of how campus was running because of the level of alcohol abuse with partying and the fraternities and sororities and all that kind of stuff. And so as I'm looking at the data and I'm chatting with folks, it's like when it comes to alcohol abuse and even alcohol related deaths on campus, it's disproportionately the white students. Because when it comes to partying and all that kind of stuff on campus, it's not us. We're not abusing alcohol like that. So it's just interesting, this conception of like you see a Black person, see a person of color, you're assuming all this drug abuse. And that's not really what's happening in our communities. But to your point around pointing out the master's degree, and I get that balance of she has a master's. Okay, it doesn't mean that just because you're highly educated, you don't abuse alcohol or drugs. But there's this sense, particularly I think as people of color, that if we get the credentials, if we dress the way you want us to dress, if we talk the way you want us to talk, then you could see us as people. We have to go above and beyond
Beyond.
Call of Duty. I got to get a PhD for you to just do a health screening and treat me like a person.
Correct.
And I think what hits home about the Dr. Moore case is that when we control for all of these like socioeconomic status, level of education, all of that, you still just see a Black person who can't be treated like a human. That in some sense, those things don't matter. And when I think about Dr. Moore's video, how many videos are there like that don't make it to the national stage, right? Like she's not special in some ways around her experiences in the healthcare system. This is just the story that we know.
And here's what's interesting about that. And if I'm wrong, I stand corrected. Now, it's news because it's social media.
Oh yeah.
But I have not seen CNN or any Good Morning America or anybody else pick up that story. Now, if I'm wrong, correct me. But I haven't seen it.
I wasn't seeing it. I was only seeing on social media. So a while ago, I was watching it. And then I just looked it up just now. New York Times wrote about it, but that was just 2 days ago.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm like, December 23rd. How long have we been talking about this?
Right. Because I've been seeing it for a couple of weeks and I saw it and I'm like, because like I've been really, really busy and I kind of scrolled through a few things on social media, but yeah. And finally I heard somebody say something and I said, I'm gonna go ahead and watch this video. And then after I watched it, I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And here's the thing. It's not to say that she wouldn't have succumbed to COVID, but whatever time she had
Yeah.
was not with dignity and grace, and it was not without pain. And her pain could have been controlled, and she could have been given dignity and grace. That's the issue.
Exactly. It's the quality of life,
Life.
whatever
Yeah.
she had, not
Yes.
could this have made a difference whether she was dying. You would
Yeah.
not treat your mom that way, right?
And then to discharge her at 10 o'clock as a courtesy,
10 o'clock? Are you kidding? You can discharge somebody at 10 o'clock.
in that condition. And then the way she described her x-ray, I'm like, why would you even discharge somebody with an x-ray like that? Like, are you crazy? But anyway.
Like when I think about your patient, when I think about Dr. Moore, there's this sense of like person and then their situation, their condition, their health. And I want to get back to and starting with the person part, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how important it is for us to know ourselves, know our bodies. Because to me, I'm curious about you, what you think, but for me, that is the foundation of self-advocacy, is the self part, knowing yourself.
Correct.
And I think a big part of people's narratives when it comes to their cancer journeys or how they navigate some health crisis is this call to action to know your body. But I don't think people really understand what that means or the journey that takes for that to be true. Like I can't just sit here and be like, I'm going to know my body, right? So tell me about your relationship to your body. How do you think you've come to know your body?
I have always been a science geek, but got really serious, I would say, junior, senior year of high school and got into working out. Typical teenager. I didn't eat bad, but I didn't always eat great. But I always looked at the genetics of things because there was cardiac disease, kidney disease, things of that nature in my family. So I want to know how that worked and what could I do to change my pathway. Obesity was an issue, so I didn't want to deal with that. I pretty much knew my body. I watched things like sodium and, didn't do a lot of processed foods and things of that nature. So I pretty much was in tune with my body, pretty much was healthy. My first real medical interaction or going into a hospital, I was 14. I was at a track meet running track. I had umbilical hernia, but I never had the really issues with it. But while I was running track, it strangulated and I had to have emergency surgery. And that was my first time ever going into a hospital. And I had that little minor surgery done. And I didn't have any other surgery until I was probably 26 or 27. I had a miscarriage and I had to have a DNC. And so other than that, I was pretty healthy.
When you look back on your medical history and how you know your body, similarly, I wasn't athletic, but I like paid attention to what was happening in my body. And then you have these like key moments where you're like, pay attention to that. All right. Pay attention to that. Right. All right, cool. Yeah. And I think sometimes like when you're on a path to diagnosis, right, you have this baseline sense of what your body does. You have a baseline sense of like, here are some of the anomalies that I experienced throughout my life. And I think sometimes you can start getting on this path towards diagnosis, but you don't know you're on it yet, right? Because these little moments happen over time. And maybe there's some things hard to miss. So I think the way I think about it, it's like a series of unfortunate events. And then you start stringing together like, okay, this is trying to tell me something. My body is trying to tell me something because these series of unfortunate events are kind of happening maybe too close together, or they're similar. And so I know you have a couple of stories as you got to your path for your cancer diagnosis. So can we start with kind of how you got to this trip to Disney and kind of walk me through what happened?
Well, I had decided to get serious about my workout regimen again. Probably a couple of months had been really hitting the gym relatively hard. And I had my days of cardio and, weights and all this kind of stuff. And a friend of mine had recommended this protein sort of like supplement that you take 30 minutes before you go to the gym, and it helps you. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I researched it. I don't just put anything in my body without researching it. So I'm like, okay. So I checked it out, and it's like, okay. And so I had been taking it for about 2 weeks. And one day I was in the gym, and I had this chest pain. And but it was more, I thought I pulled a muscle. I didn't really think much of it. I thought I pulled a muscle. And because like I said, I was really, butterflies and pulling up and all this kind of stuff. So I'm
Like, you know
thinking,
what you're doing. You're an athlete. So this, you're not, just doing
yeah,
some squats in the corner. You're hitting
no,
it.
no, no, no. I'm hitting it. So, and the pain wasn't like I didn't consider it like a cardiac type thing. I was like, okay, I pulled a muscle. I would have it off and on for a couple of weeks, but like no big deal. You do the typical thing. You pop a couple of Advil, heat pack, and you keep it pushing, right? So I backed off on some of the weights. I went down on some of the weights, and then I cut back on some of my reps, and I was fine. And so my kids had always wanted to see Disney for the holidays at Christmas time, right? Because they watch some show. We're here in Houston, it's ABC 13, but they would air this thing around the holidays where Disney has all the lights and stuff, right? And I told them, I said, well, when you get older, I'll take you. If I'm gonna spend that kind of money, you got to remember it.
Exactly.
So we decided that we would take the kids to Disney, and that had to be December 2010. So we took them. My oldest had to be about 15, and my youngest, he was 10. And so we're having a good time. Everything's fine. It was just a beautiful night. It was really nice. And we were heading back, and all of a sudden, I had this chest pain, and it was so intense that I became short of breath. It was like, the best way to describe it is like somebody just kind of sucker punched me in the middle of my back and just take your breath away. It stopped me in my tracks. And my son said, Mom, what's wrong? And I'm like, oh, nothing. Because, I didn't want to worry them. And I'm like, He was like, Mom, what's wrong? I said, oh, nothing. He was like, yeah, something's wrong. What's wrong? And so my husband at the time, he said, you having chest pain again? And I'm like, yeah, but it'll pass. Of course, he immediately starts fussing. There's them darn things you're drinking. I told you to quit drinking those protein, that stuff you don't. And I'm like, I haven't drank that stuff and whatever. And so, of course, my sons, being boys and how they are about their mom, it's like, we need to go to the emergency room. Let's just go. I'm like, we don't need to go to the emergency room. It's passing. I'm feeling better. We'll just go, lie down, and I'm fine. So it did, and I'm fine. I'm good. No more pain, no more issues. And January rolls around. I'm at work. I would say middle school nurse. I get a call about a kid having an asthma attack, and because the kid is on the other side of the building, and I'm halfway there, and it happens again where I just lose my breath, and I'm like, and my assistant, I said, I can't make it. And she said, Miss Angela, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. And she looked at me, and I said, but I'm fine. You take this and get to him. I told the assistant principal, I said, you can go ahead and call 911 for me and let them know you think that your nurse is having a cardiac arrest. Tell them just like that. I said, when the ambulance arrived, I said, in case something happened to me, tell them this is the hospital to take me to. No other hospital. This is where I'm going, right? Because there's a rule that they take you to the nearest hospital. And
Yeah.
I didn't like the nearest hospital.
I know where I need to go.
Yeah. Make a long story short, we get to this hospital and they do the cardiac workup, and they give you the morphine for the chest pain and all this kind of stuff. And doctor comes in and he says, I'm gonna do a stress test on you. And I said, okay. So they do the stress test and he came back and he said, well, he said, your EKG and your stress test is negative. I think you have GERD.
Mm-hmm.
I said to him, I said, sir, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I said, I don't have GERD. I know this is not GERD. So he hands me a prescription for Protonics. And I told him, I said, you can keep that prescription, right? And I said, I know this is not GERD. And here's the thing. He never once asked me, was that the first time I had the pain?
Yeah.
Or anything. He was just telling me that just because my cardiac enzymes were negative and the stress test was negative, it was GERD.
Yeah. And what's GERD?
GERD is like when you have acid reflux. And so basically a more fancy word for indigestion, kind of, sort of. I just knew in the pit of my stomach, I knew it wasn't GERD. So I'm thinking maybe I have some sort of blockage, maybe it's in a small vessel or something. And my mother died of a heart attack at the age of 56. And like I said, there's cardiac disease on both sides, on my father and my mom's side. And I'm like, I'm not going to be this statistic just because this doctor thinks I have GERD.
Yeah.
So I get home and I called a friend of mine who's a physician, and I said to her, I said, listen, I need a cardiologist.
Yeah.
Someone who you would go to, or if it was your mom or your dad,
Yeah.
So she gave me a name. I made an appointment. And when I went in to see him, he walked in and I said to him, I said, nice to meet you. However, I'd like to interview you. He said, okay. I said, because here's the thing. There's no sense in me wasting your time and vice versa if we are not on the same page, right? And I'm having these issues, and if you're going to be dismissive, there's no sense. You were recommended to me. I trust the person. However, I'm just not going to blindly trust, because we may not always agree, but we got to be on the same page. And this is what I'm looking for.
And I think that's the shift, right? Like, we're partners in this.
Right.
One, not just your medical background and your experience, but I'm the patient. Like, there's a partnership here. And so
correct.
There is a level of, okay, how competent are you as a medical professional? How can we be in communication and work on this together? What I find interesting in listening to your story here is that there's this shift, right? You're at Disney with your family, you're experiencing all this pain, and you still have this focus of, okay, what's going on with my kids? What do they need? I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Then I hear this story at work with this asthmatic kid who needs attention. You can't get there. Your priority was to make sure that this kid got the medical attention that they need. When he's okay, then you call 911 for me. Now, what I'm hearing in your story is, here's what I need. Here's what's going on with me. I'm not going to deal with X, Y, and Z because I need to stay focused on what's going to get me the best care. I'm not going to go to this hospital, and here's what I need from you. And I really appreciate that shift, because I wonder what you think about folks being in a caring profession, as you're in as a nurse, being around kids, having a family, and having this orientation of caring for other people. What do you think about that shift in then saying, okay, this is what I need. Here's how I'm going to focus on myself?
I think that most care providers, those who are called to it, oftentimes will neglect themselves. And one of the things that I learned through this process is not to neglect myself. The best way to describe it, Jody Ann, is like this. I'm no good to anyone if I don't take care of me first. I'm not. Many years ago, I was putting together a business proposal, and the financial guy that I was meeting with, he said to me, what are your goals? short-term, long-term goals? And what legacy would you like to have come out of starting this business? I said to him, I said, one of the things I would like to see come to fruition is this business is an asset to the community, that we're not just taking from the community, but we're giving back and we're pouring into the community, right? He said, that's fine, that's great. He said, I understand it. He said, but when you take a cookie jar, nice and clean, right? But you have to fill the cookie jar first. He said, when you get down and you get that last cookie out, the jar is no longer clean, got all these crumbs in it, right? He said, you got to fill the cookie jar first. So that's basically telling me that I have to fill me first in order to be able to sprinkle anything to anybody else.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn that. And something magical happens when you turn 40.
Yes, please tell me. I just got a couple years until I get there, so give me the sneak peek.
Oh my God, something magical happens at 40. You learn that what took me so long, what the hell was I thinking? The word no just becomes your favorite word. And you're so unapologetic about it. And then when you hit 50, hell no becomes your
30's like, I think so, maybe. And then you keep 40, like, no.
And then 50, hell
no.
No.
60, we're like, that. No.
It's true, though. It's true.
So you're in the doctor's office and you're like, listen,
we're going to interview. And he said, and he said, he crossed his legs. I'll never forget it. He crossed his legs and he said, shoot. He said, what's your question? Shoot.
That is what I need.
I said, check. I said, okay, he's off to a good start. And It didn't hurt that he was cute. This is what I liked about him. And I don't mind. I can say his name, right?
Yeah, if you want to share it, go for it.
Okay, his name is Dr. Colin Barker. He's a cardiologist. He used to be here in Houston, but he took a chairman of cardiology role, and so he's no longer here. But his name is Colin Barker, Barker. He's a fantastic cardiologist. Bedside manner is fantastic. But he crossed his leg and he said and he turned it and he looked at me. He wasn't paying attention to anything but me, right? And he said, shoot. And so I told him, I said, okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need. And this is what's going on. And I have, my mom died at age 56 of cardiac disease. My father has cardiac disease. And I just gave him my history, what I'm looking for, what I expect in a partnership from a physician, right? And he said, oh, that's not unreasonable, and we went from there. And then he said, okay, this is what I think. And I'd like to start with doing this first. Is that, are you agreeable to that? And then he explained why. Not, oh, I'm just going to order this test, but why? What was he looking for? What he hoped to, and he didn't assume that just because I was in healthcare that there was no explanation that needed to go with it.
Yes.
He gave me the explanation, and then we got to work.
Yeah, I love the emphasis here around like not assuming just because you were in the healthcare field that you didn't need a walkthrough, right?
Right.
And it's like,
right.
Whether I know or don't know, just because I might know doesn't mean I don't need the care, attention, support, and help. And I think particularly as strong women, we don't get that grace, I think, of like, oh, just because she might have it, doesn't mean she doesn't need support.
Correct.
That support also looks like having a good relationship with your doctor. That's why that focus is so important. Are you looking at me or are you looking at the computer? Do you understand like my idiosyncrasies, the things that I need, how I communicate in order for us to have that good relationship? Because that could end up saving somebody's life, right?
Correct.
There are instances when I've developed relationships with doctors over the years where I could just text them or call them, or, if I call the office, the front desk knows kind of who I am, and you have that, type of relationship where you can get the access that everyone should have.
Correct.
I want you to share the story of, like, I guess how you even leveraged that to be able to just call them when you were running errands that day, and then you ended up with the diagnosis.
Well, one of the things that he did is he wanted me to wear a 24-hour Holter monitor, and so I did that, and it was negative, and so he finally decided that I could go back to work. And after being back at work for about a week, I I wasn't feeling too well. I was sort of just fatigued, and went out that Saturday to run errands. And in the middle of running errands, had this chest pain again while I'm driving, kind of took my breath away. And one of the things that he had did was he'd given me his cell phone number. And I don't think that all doctors need to do that. And I think because you have some people who are or will be abusive and intrusive,
Yeah.
So what I did was I didn't even call. I just text and I said, "Hey, I'm having this chest pain again." And he called and he asked me, he said, do I need to call an ambulance? And I said, no, I can make it. And he said, okay, I'm gonna call ahead to the hospital. And I was like, I don't know what this is, because I had had an echo, I had had my EKG, I had the stress test, and I had worn a 24-hour Holter monitor. And he said, the only thing we have not done is a heart cath. We can't put it off anymore. We're going to have to do a heart cath because it must be small vessels. So he said, I'll meet you at the hospital. So we do the heart cath, and he walks in and he had this look on his face. And I'm like, oh shit, I must need bypass surgery. And I said, what? And he said, you want the good news or the bad news? And I said,
don't do that. Just lay it out.
Just shoot. I'm a straight shooter. Just shoot. He said, well, the good news is it's not your heart. Your vessels are fine. And so I said, then what's wrong? And he said, when you went to the emergency room the first time, did they not do a chest x-ray on you? And I said, yes. He said, they didn't say anything about it? I said, no. He said, you have a mass in the center of your chest. And I said, what? And he said, you have a mass. We're going to have it biopsied. And I said, okay. But when he said it,
yeah,
it's like this feeling that I had been having in the pit of my stomach all of a sudden made sense. At that moment, I knew. I don't know how I knew, but I knew, right? And I said, oh, wow, okay. And he said, so from the looks of the x-ray, it looks like it's about the size of a small lemon, and it's sitting up against your heart. So that's why all this time we've been thinking it's cardiac disease. But just being in healthcare, a tumor sitting up against your heart is not a normal thing.
No.
So I just knew. I just knew that it wasn't going to be benign. I did. I knew. My concern was had it started to wrap itself around vessels, or had it started encroaching into the cardiac muscle. How extensive it was going to be. That's where my head was. So yeah, that was the journey on diagnosis. And so I had the biopsy on February the 11th, and I had the surgery to have the tumor excised on February the 14th. And my friends was like, only you would have open heart surgery on Valentine's Day, because they had to do the same. The surgery was the same as a thoracotomy. So yeah.
You're like, I have an open heart. Like literally and figuratively, I have an open heart.
But I told my friends, I was like, y'all know I never do anything simple. Come on, right?
So what was your diagnosis?
Large B-cell lymphoma.
It's interesting because these are the types of cancers and tumors and stuff that people don't know a lot about.
And I had to find a support group. And that was interesting. I I shared with a friend of mine recently who successfully battled prostate cancer, and he was talking about his support group. I asked him, was his support group mixed? You know, what was the makeup? And he said it was about 40 people in the support group.
Mm-hmm.
Significant number of African American men, and I asked him how important that was to him, and he said it was important. And the main person that he is in contact with still is an African American. And I was saying to him that the support group was helpful in that it provided me with resource and information about the disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't feel inclusive in that group because there was no one in that room that looked like me, right? And
Yeah.
I internally, I was an emotional wreck. I felt like my role was my job was to kick cancer in the ass,
Yep.
right? But not only kick it in the ass, but to also show my children that I was going to be okay, right? But really, deep down inside, there were moments when I wasn't so sure, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get what I'm about to say. You've ever been at an event or something, a professional event or something, and you walk in the room and you don't see anyone that look like you, and when you finally see someone that look like you, you can make eye contact and a whole conversation transpires, and you've never met that person, you'd be like, whew, you know, it's
Yes.
like, so I wanted a support group where I went and I could feel a part of something. And it's something about sisterhood. It's something about our relationship with one another that we have, that it's like growing up as a kid. My grandmother used to make these quilts. I wish I could find one to this day because I wouldn't even have to turn my heat on because they were so warm, like, right? And it's like our sisterhood, when we are together, it's like having that warm quilt, that warm hug, right? And so I wanted a support group to where not only could I get the medical information and resource information, but that emotional support that we give each other. Because yes, we're all human and da da, da, but we have some experiences that only we share and we understand. And so I went to one or two meetings, and then after that, I'm like, damn, I'm out. This is not for me.
Back in the day when we went to stuff and saw people across rooms, right? When you see the only other Black person there, you have that visual conversation. And you described it well with the like, oh, okay, right? Like there's this release. And what's being released is this guard, this armor, where now I can actually do what I came here to do because I'm not holding that up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when we're trying to navigate support spaces, I don't want to be guarded. I don't want, to be holding my breath to just at least try to get a little something out of here. I want to be in a space where I could like, oh, okay, cool, breathe. You sit back, and you can actually get the support and care that you
Right.
need without being so
Right.
guarded.
Correct.
It's just hard to, I think, even access my own humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm also trying to navigate, I'm also trying to find the space to just be myself. It's too much to manage. And then also dealing with like, wait, did I just have cancer? You know? Ah. So I love this sense of this quilt holding you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that visual, that sense of being held and what that means for you also showed up in that dream that you told me about your need for speed.
You didn't forget that, did you?
No, I did not forget that. Do you want to share that story?
So before I was diagnosed, one night I had a dream, and it was very, very vivid. And in this dream, I was driving with my youngest son. We took this curve, like I was coming off the freeway going on an upper ramp, and I lost control of the vehicle, and we went over the ramp. And as the car was falling, I remember just saying to him, Mama is so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have slowed down. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I remember praying to God saying, just let him be okay. When this lands, just let him be okay. And I remember sitting straight up in the bed from that dream because it was so real and so vivid to me. After that, I was driving more cautiously. And it's not that I'm a bad driver. I just have a heavy foot. I just have a need for speed.
My foot is it's just heavy. It's
It's
just a little
just,
heavy.
I don't, yeah.
Everybody's different. Mine's
It's
just a
just a
little
little
heavy.
heavy. I like supercars, power cars, but anyway. Um, I was driving so cautiously. In fact, my kids were like, Mom, what's wrong with you? What's going on? Like, what? I'm like, I'm driving the speed limit. It was like, you never drive. I said, I do. But I knew that dream, I had that dream because God was getting ready to prepare me for something. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know whether someone close to me was getting ready to go through something or someone was going to die. My first reaction was, I didn't know whether God was trying to tell me that he was getting ready to take one of my kids. I didn't know what it was. I just knew something different that was going to be a challenge was about to happen in my life. He was preparing me for it. And when I got my diagnosis, I remembered the dream. That's what the dream was about. Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember after I had my surgery, I couldn't sleep in my bed. I slept in a recliner. It just was too hard. And it really wasn't the lying down, it was the getting up that was so painful. And so I'm like, forget this. And I remember one night I got this, I think it was a panic attack, but it was a feeling of doom. And it was a feeling of, I'm not going to beat this. I'm going to die, you know? And Good Morning America was on. And they were talking about, it was after that nuclear explosion had happened over in China, whatever. And they talked about this guy that had been out on a boat or whatever, and he had been out in the ocean for a couple of days on a little piece of driftwood. And as a result of when that thing exploded, the little boat that he was on, a little fisher boat or whatever, the sheer force of it caused his little boat to splinter. And he had been clinging on to this little piece of board. And they were talking about it on Good Morning America. Just as clear as I'm talking to you right now, I heard this voice say, do you honestly believe that if I can't keep that person, I don't have you? And it startled me, like, because I'm like, okay, I'm in this house by myself. And I sat,
Yeah.
and I set up, and that's when I realized Good Morning America is on, and I'm hearing the story, but I'm like, well, where's that voice coming from? And at that moment, all doubt about me surviving, getting through it, from that moment forward, I never had a belief that I would not survive.
Yeah.
Not that it was going to be easy, but I never thought that I wouldn't get through it. Like, I knew I was going to get through it from that going forward. I knew, like, okay, I'm good. I laced my gloves up and like, round two, let's go.
Yeah. How do you feel like your faith in God supported you during this time? And did it ever waver?
I can't say that it wavered. It was everything and is everything to me. My journey in my spiritual beliefs and what was initially taught to me have changed over the years. But I do believe that there's a higher power, and I do believe that we are required to love. I don't think that it has to be so regimented and so. I think if you read for yourself, I think the whole basis of it is that he expected us to love one another, right? It is very important to me.
My family is very religious. I come from a Christian household. I'm not totally there. Though, like, even in my own experience, I don't know, I never got there.
What do you mean?
Like, I always had a vision, like, if I was facing some major life crisis, that I would just fall on my knees and, like, like, God, like, take me through this. I will do all the things, right? All the things that my family does, I was raised to do, dedicate my life to the Lord, put God first. Like, I thought maybe that was what would take me there. And I feel like as I was navigating my own experience, I was open to all the options, right? Like, my family prayed, my coworkers, because I was working internationally, where, they'll pray before meetings, right? I heard that my coworkers in Malawi and, Mozambique, like, they prayed at work for me, and I feel very held by those prayers. Like, that was very important to me. But I wasn't the one praying all the time. I think I was still trying to manage what I needed to manage, because there was this sense for me that if I left it up to God, right, which, a lot of my family members have this orientation of leaving up to God, that, at least for me, I didn't know if that could coexist with interviewing doctors, with, being on the internet every day, trying to understand my diagnosis, making all these real world decisions. Again, like, this is just me. Like, it was hard for me to do that and have this sense of, like, leaving it to God.
I was reared in a very Christian household as well. I was a PK kid.
PKs, raise up.
Yeah.
Not me, but I know a lot. I know a lot of y'all.
So that's what I mean. And I think that there's this unfortunate, and this is just my opinion, okay? I think that there's this ideology of leaving everything up to God. And I don't subscribe to that. I don't think that that decreases one's faith, but I love analogies, but okay, so I can't go eat 50 damn cheeseburgers every day, French fries, never work out, never do any of those things. And then when I get diabetes, heart disease, then I want to pray and tell everybody to pray for me and leave it up to God to heal me. I caused it.
Yeah, yeah.
Am I making sense?
It doesn't mean you don't deserve saving.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that.
Exactly. That's not
That's
what
not
you're
what
saying.
I'm saying. Because we make mistakes and we all fall short, right? But I got to bear some of the responsibility and I got to do some of the work. So since I dug myself into that situation, I got to dig myself. I got to back up off that stuff. I got to start exercising. I have to do my due diligence, meaning that I got to find someone that can help me manage it. I have to align myself with the right people. And then because I've made a step, he said, if you make one, he'll make two. Okay. So that's what I mean. I think that he gives us the skills and the ability, and he has put people in the world to help us navigate and to get to the things that we need. And I don't think that you have to forego faith and science. I think they can coexist.
Yeah.
I think they can coexist.
No, and I hear that. I totally hear that. And I hear that in your story too, of having these experiences with God, knowing that he was holding you, but there were still things that you were doing, not just managing your own care, but you shared that you were making plans in case you did die, right?
In everything, usually there's a goal, there's an end goal, right? So you go to college, your end goal is to be able to get a job in whatever field so you can create a life, right? With Christians, their end goal is to be able to see him face to face, right? What's their favorite song they sing? And then if you go to any funeral, I want two wings to veil my face, and right? Okay.
Yep.
But I find it amazing that when Jesus comes and ring the doorbell, all of a sudden that same man that they've been crying that they can't wait to see, When he rings the doorbell, all of a sudden it's like, hold up, Jesus. I'm not home.
Yeah,
Hold
hold
on.
on.
Not
Not
yet.
you
You too
too
early.
early. I said dinner was at 6.
Get me to 7.
Yeah.
So I just find that a very interesting, especially in Christians who talk about they can't wait to see him, and I'm gonna put on my robe. But then when he tries to give you the robe, you be like, pause, wait. My
Yeah.
thing was, I believe and I trust, but I also was like, Lord, not my will, but your will be done, right? I want to stay here. The desires of my heart is to stay here, see my children, and Lord, perhaps a couple of grandchildren, right? My father's mother taught me a valuable lesson when I was about 11. I called her, I had a field trip, and I called her. Now, I needed $10 for the field trip. And periodically, my grandmother would send me money. And every time she would send me money, she always would either send me 2 5s or a $10 bill every time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed $10 for this field trip. And so I called her and I said, Grandma Rosie, I'm going on a field trip and I need a couple of dollars. Will you send them to me? Because mom is running a little short and I need them for this field trip. She said, okay, baby, when do you need it by? And I told her. And during that time, the postal service, if you something hit the mail on Monday, you normally got it by Wednesday. So I run to the mailbox all excited. And I get there and I tear the letter open and there's $2 in it, 2 singles. And the tears begin to flow. And I'm like, I'm not going to make my field trip because I needed $10. I run in the house and I call her. And I said, Grandma Rosie, I got the money. I said, but it's not enough. And she said, well, baby, I sent you what you asked me for. You told me you needed a couple of dollars. Couple is 2.
I'm dead.
I said, but the field trip is 10. She said, why didn't you ask me for 10? Mean what you say what you mean. Ask for what it exactly is. So when I had my kids, I used to pray and I used to say, Lord, let me live to see my children of a good age. And then I had to change that and say, because by the time I got diagnosed, my kid was 15 and 10. Well, to some, that's a good age. What the define good age? Define that, right? So then I had to change and say, Lord, I would like to live to be, and I named the specific age, right? At least with a reasonable portion of health and strength and clothes in my right mind, right? So you got to be specific and ask for those things. My prayer was that if I was not going to make it, then I went and took care of my business. I called my attorney, make sure that the will was in order. I still wanted their things set up. So I wanted set up in trust so that if they did not go to school, then they couldn't touch it till they were 30.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. I went to the funeral home. I ordered my own coffin, which is paid for, headstone, all that stuff is down. The only thing they need to do is put a date on there. And since that time, I've even changed my mind, decided that I want to be cremated.
Yeah.
All that stuff was done. All they would have to do is just, at that time, they would have just had to take clothes and really I had that picked out too. So.
Wow. Picked out your outfit.
Girl, I can't be going out any kind of way now. Listen. Gotta be cute in all things. Listen.
Okay, so this connects in 2 ways, right? With other things that you've told me. This preparation, like in case I die, here's my coffin, here's my outfit, here's this. And that showed up in the letter that you wrote to your son.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk, if you have a few more minutes, I would love to talk about that. And I also want to talk about like making sure you look cute, because we have to talk about your stylist, your hairdresser. Yes. So those are 2 things I want to make sure we get on the record. Yeah. So like, as you think about your faith, like this confidence that God will hold you. You're also preparing your family for the possibility of your death, right? And I think a lot of times folks think that when you're on your diagnosis and treatment journey, that that's the only thing that you're doing. It's not, right? Your son's going to college. You still have to manage your care,
Yeah.
and also help him, go to school. So tell me about the Morehouse tradition and how you were navigating your own health space, your own mental state, your journey, and supporting him and what he was doing.
When we took him, I had a backpack with chemo infusing. I was bald. I had no eyelashes, no eyebrows. And so one of their traditions is that they ask the parents to write a letter, and then they put it in this box and they seal it. And then at the end of the 4 years, they give it to the kid. One of the things I had said to my son was that my illness in no way was an excuse for him not to be who God called him to be and to achieve those things that he had dreamed for himself. One of the things that I love about my son, other than the fact that he's mine, is that this kid, well, he's not a kid anymore, but he's my kid. Anything that he's ever dreamed, he's made it happen. He inspires me to dream bigger for myself and to not quit, because he just, even before, what was that book, The Secret, where it talked about putting things into the atmosphere and all that kind of stuff, where this kid was doing that before The Secret was all the rage. He just did. He just put it out there, and he just did. And I remember when the first letter that came, college letter that came, was from Howard. And I'm all excited, right? I'm saying, hey, you got into Howard. He was like, yeah.
Whatever. It's just a Tuesday.
He said, has anything arrived for Morehouse? I'm like, okay. Because that's his vision was, right?
Yeah. He knew what he wanted.
Right? So anyway, I wrote this letter to him, and I said to him that I believed that I was going to make it, but if I didn't, there was things that I wanted him to know, right? And they included not only the visions and the things that I saw for him and that what God had for him, but also I wanted him to realize that there were going to be some challenges and that he was going to fall, and it was okay to fall. He just couldn't stay down.
I love that.
And that eventually I was going to have grandchildren, and I wanted them to know about me, to tell them the stories about me. Like, if he saw a really cool car, he could say, your grandmother would have loved that car, because that's something he and I love. We love cars, and especially the faster they are, the better. Great music, or great food, or just stories in general. Like, child, let me tell you about your grandmother. She'd get her hair fixed and she'd sleep like, because she, those type of things. Or your grandmother, if push, could curse like a sailor and then pull out a $50 word. Or your grandmother could go to the gun range and shoot with the best of them. Your grandmother would, that's just, just how cool, So the letter was basically like that, and that in his moments when he thought that he was missing me, that I still was with him, that I had given him everything he needed, right? All he had to do was go run his race, and to remember it was his race, nobody else's race. Don't be busy worrying about what somebody else is doing, just to run his race. And that I was already proud of him. He need not ever worry about, I wonder if mama proud. Pretty damn proud of you, kid. So that was it. And they sealed it up.
So what happened when you survived and then he gets the letter?
We just cried, because look how awesome that is, man.
Yeah. I think a lot of times I think about my parents passing one day, which we all do, which I think it's hard to even reconcile that. I think once you go through cancer journey, you have a different acceptance of death. Like it's a little bit more casual, I think. But like at least for me, I got confronted with, oh, I'm gonna die maybe sooner than I thought, but it will happen. And so I think about, the people around me, what will happen with when they die, not if they die, when they die. And I think sometimes, like, as I make decisions about how often I talk to my parents, how often I get to see them, because I don't live around them, and COVID and all of this, like what if my parents died this year, God forbid? What are they proud of me? Like, what did they think about me? Like all of these questions that I would have about them. And I just think it's really powerful that you laid that out. Like he has that now, like forever. It's just a powerful kind of like thing to have, thing to know. I mean, was it even difficult to write?
It was difficult to write in a sense of the thought of not being able to possibly not be here to witness all that I believe God will use him to be and do, right? But then again, I've been exposed to so much in healthcare that their father and I have raised them with the understanding of, look, your father and I will not be here always, right? And whenever we leave this world, we need to leave you where you are able to stand. You'll go through the normal grieving process, but we never wanted to leave this world, especially boys, Black boys. We're not going to leave this world with boys. We're going to leave this world with two strong men. And you'll go through the normal grieving process of you lost a parent, but not emotional cripples. And I learned that lesson, I think, from my uncle. My grandfather's oldest brother had a son who was born with Down syndrome. My cousin was born in the 40s or 50s. And so during those times, for a child to be born with Down syndrome, they were advised to put them in mental institutions, right? My uncle was like, no, he's my son, right? When my uncle's wife died, it made my uncle say, oh, wow. So what he did was, probably within about a year of my aunt's passing, he found an assistant group home for my cousin. And he put him there to start living, and he would go get him on the weekends. But his philosophy was, I get to pick the place. I'm still here to make sure that it's an adequate place. If it's not, I can move him, right? Because after his wife died, it made him realize, I'm not going to be here forever. And so when the time comes for me, I want my son just to go through the normal grieving process, not be lost in a world and be thrown somewhere where I don't even know where he is, and maybe with people he doesn't know.
Yeah.
So I think we do a disservice to our children if we don't prepare them. And I think one of the biggest disservices that we do as human beings is that we do not incorporate our demise into our planning.
That is so powerful.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you got to be morbid, you got to go around dreaming about your death, but it needs to be a part of your planning process. If we know that death is inevitable, why do we not plan for it? And I think that that's why there's such a fear, and that is why that when Jesus rang the doorbell, people go running, right? But even more so as Christians, if we say that we know we're going to get eternal life, and that's who we want to go see, why do we still fear it? So,
you know that song, I wanna be ready. It's like, do you want to be ready though? You better get your house in order.
But here's the thing, I think, and this, again, this is just my opinion.
Yeah.
I think religion has confused people to what ready means. So, because there is no perfection, you can't obtain it. So I think that that's why people are so fearful, because it's like, oh my God, did I do enough? Am I really, the best way to look at it? And hopefully a lot of religious folks don't come after you, and nor me. But if a thief was on the cross and he found salvation, that's hope for everybody. It's never too late, I don't think. Right? That's just what I think.
Yeah, no, I hear it. And what I like about this conversation is it's the conversation I think people are afraid to have, is to really interrogate religion and its role in our lives, and faith and our beliefs, what that enables us to do, and some ways that maybe we need to rethink.
Yeah.
Not like whether we're faithful, like, but rethinking our actions and like how we can do our part. So I don't,
Right.
I don't want religious folks coming after us, because I think we're trying to have honest conversations about navigating health, navigating death, and faith, and what preparation looks like, right? Like I think this is a very like real conversation. So no, I appreciate that. So before I let you go,
yes,
we have to talk about the hair. We have to do it. It's mandatory, right? Well, I think like hair is important for women of color in general. It is a big deal in the Black community. And then we think about chemotherapy and potential hair loss. And I think like in the context of cancer, people are like, are you alive? Right? That should mean more than what you look like. And you're like, well, that's a false choice. I could also be cute. Like, I don't know why. Like, that is also important. I didn't go through chemotherapy. Well, they weren't sure what the path would look like after this, if they couldn't get everything from my surgery. But because the incision was right at the base of my neck where the tumor was, I was like, okay, so what am I going to do with my hair? I'm going to be in a hospital. Do I need to shave it? Because if y'all are going to shave it, I'm going to shave it first to make sure you have space for these incisions. And that was part of the conversation with my surgeon. And other people like, why are you talking about your hair? I'm like, it becomes part of the planning process.
Correct.
And a legitimate, valid, important part of the process, like not minimal at all. And so, as you knew that you're going to go through chemotherapy, how did you navigate hair loss, potential hair loss, and how you felt about yourself as a result of that? Like, what did you do?
I guess it has to start. I was born, my mother said that I was born with a head full of hair, right? And as a little girl, I always had very thick hair, very long hair. And I remember as a little girl being in elementary school, boys passing by, pulling my hair, right? I remember the Saturday rituals of on Friday night, we got our hair washed, the girls, and my grandmother would oil it with this god awful smelling junk.
Was it the sulfur thing? I had a sulfur.
Yeah, Glover's mane.
Yes. Oh my God. Why do I have to walk around smelling like that? But
I don't know. Yeah. But my hair was like really, really thick. Just and then Saturday you got your hair pressed, That in itself was anyway. Only to get put in ponytails, I don't know. And they may let you get a little bump on or whatever.
Yeah.
But I said all of that just because my hair has always been a part of my identity. And people have always complimented me on my hair for as long as I can remember. I was old enough, it was my calling card.
Hey.
Right? Guys would always be, oh my God, is all that hair yours? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I always had very thick, long eyelashes. My oldest son has my eyelashes. My youngest son, he has thick eyelashes. So both of them got my eyelashes. But those two things, my eyes and my hair, were my calling cards when I was in the dating scene. Right? When I got married, when I was dating my ex, he was be like, that was his thing. It was my hair. And my beautician, she had been my beautician for maybe close to 10 years when I got my diagnosis. About a year and a half prior to getting my diagnosis, I had decided to stop using chemicals on my hair and I had gone natural. But maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I would go and get silk pressed. and I would let her do the silk press. And so I went in, let her do the silk press, and I told her, I said, look, I may be coming to let you cut my hair, take it all off. I've got diagnosed with cancer, and I'd rather you cut it than to let chemo take it out, right? Because to me, letting it fall out due to chemo was allowing cancer to take something. If it was going to come out, I would rather cut it off, right? And she was like, no, I can't cut it. And I'm like, yeah, let's go ahead. I said, let's do this. Let's do this silk press before I start chemo. Let's do this silk press. And then when I come back, we're just going to go ahead and take it off. So I said, hey, I'll come in right before I start chemo, and you can shave it for me. She was crying. She was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I'm like, girl, get yourself together.
Are you crying?
I said, what? Yeah. I was like, it's just hair. She's like, Angela, I can't do it. And I was like, girl, get yourself together. I'll see you in 2 weeks. So going 2 weeks in, I'm like, you ready? And she literally got the scissors and she was like, I can't do it. I just cannot do it. And she said, there are a few people who, even though they say their hair are going to fall out, there are a few people who it doesn't. You may be one of those individuals. You being premature, don't do it. If she said, I'll make a deal with you. If your hair starts coming out, I'll put my big girl panties on and I'll cut it for you. Mm-hmm. But let's just wait.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, Renee, okay. So went through round 1, first round of chemo. I'm like, probably a week, maybe 2 weeks after the first round. I don't know what made me want to brush my hair.
Yeah.
And it started coming out, and it shook me to my core. I was mad. I was mad at myself. I knew it was going to happen, and I allowed someone to take me off of my path of what I wanted to do, all because they weren't comfortable, right? And I felt like I put myself in an emotional situation that I didn't even have to deal with had I just went ahead and shaved my hair.
Yeah.
Right? So I was mad. And so I had to stand there and get myself together. And I'm like, see, this is what I wanted to avoid. You knew. But then after a while, I realized that part of it was I wasn't really ready to cut my hair either. Right? Because anyone who knows me well enough that if it's something that I really want to do, you can't talk me out of it. Her not being able to cut it helped me in my part of not really ready to cut it either, because it had been such a part of my identity.
It like gave you a out, right? Like if you really wanted the hair cut, the hair would have been cut.
It would have been cut because I would have taken.
It gave you an out.
Taken the scissors. Yeah, I would have taken the scissors out of her hand, started cutting it, and it would have forced her to cut it if I really wanted to.
Yeah, she's like, you can't walk out looking like that. Now I'm.
yeah, having everybody believe that you came out of my shop looking like that. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I still got angry, right? And I don't, I was like, oh, I knew. And so when I got over it, I just, I went under the counter, got the clippers, and I took it all off. And when I came in the living room, the boys was like, and they were in shock. They was like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. And they said, why? I said, because I combed it and it was coming out, and I'm not going to let cancer just take it piece by piece by piece.
Yeah.
So I just took it all off. And because when I took it all off and I looked in the mirror and I'm like, oh, you have a perfectly round shaped head. Girl, let me tell you something. I realized my head was perfectly round. I was cute as hell. Girl, I got me some big earrings.
Yes.
And they was like, are you going to do a wig?
A wig on this? Do you see this?
No. Oh, you see this? Girl, look at here. And people would stop and say, oh my God, girl, your head is fierce. You're rocking the ball. Thank you.
Yeah.
And kept it pushing, And girl, when I was really feeling myself and pop the makeup, oh girl, you couldn't tell me nothing. Yeah, nothing.
I know I love that, like, on the other side of it, you're just like, oh, wait, hold up. Who's that girl? Yes.
What? I was like, oh my God. Yeah. And then I would see pictures and I found me some like these aviator
Oh,
shades.
yeah.
Oh, when I put those on, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, you can't tell me nothing.
So then what happens when chemo's done? How do you transition back, right? With your perfectly round head.
It started growing back and it grew back. Oftentimes what a lot of people don't understand, and I knew this because I have an oncology background, oftentimes people hair will grow back different texture. And this time it was very fine
Yeah.
in the beginning. I made the decision that I wouldn't grow it completely out again because I love the freedom of just getting up going. I had a standing every week beauty shop appointment, right? And I would spend 3 hours because it would take literally 2.5 hours just for my hair to dry because that's how long and thick it was. And even when I trimmed my hair or cut it, because it was so thick, it still took about 2 hours for it to dry, sitting under the dryer for 2 hours. And I asked myself, what was more important to me? And for me personally, I had more important things to do than to sit under a dryer for 2.5 hours. Like
Yeah.
time became so important to me. I value my time and how I want to spend it and what I want to do with it, right? And even going through treatment, negotiating my appointments and how my appointments went. The best thing they did for me was give me that calendar where I could go in there, reschedule, and move my appointments around. Because in the beginning, like they would give me, okay, 7 a.m. blood work, and then I would maybe have a 2 or 3 hour lag. And then, PET scan, whatever, then chemo. I was like, excuse me, hello, y'all not the one with the tumor.
Yep.
And I don't want to be here with y'all all day. I have things to do. If I am on a time crunch, I like to do some stuff. So I don't want to sit here with y'all. So I was going there, no, move this around. No.
Let's look at the calendar again. I love that empowerment, right?
Like move it around, no. And then if I just couldn't do it, then I learned that they had different classes. So it'd be whether I want to go do meditation or yoga or learning about different teas or whatever it was, but it would be what I wanted to do, and I could fill that time, but I would compress that day. So instead of me being there 8 hours a day, I could compress it down to 4 hours a day or whatever, because it was my time. Look, y'all not going to get to take my time away from me. And I think that's what they forgot. I think that people forget, and it may not be perfect and you can't do it always, but it shouldn't be all the time. I met with one of the patient advocates and I said, listen, y'all have to do a better job at recognizing that people are fighting for their lives. And you have to be able to think about that people don't want to waste their time. At least I personally don't want to waste my time in here. And you have to be more accommodating for that.
And in some sense, like when you were sharing about your patient this week who has terminal cancer and your conversations with the spouse of trying to refocus the value on time, what do you do with your time? The lessons of time and my time, my mental energy, my emotional energy becomes way more important to me than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
Way more. I've said no to money. Like, oh, hey, can you come and do this? Because I do a lot of public speaking. I'm like, I don't want to do it. No, like we said, no, that's it. I don't want to do it because my time is so important. I wonder for you, as we wrap up here, who do you think this experience turned you into?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Oh, wow. I really own who I am and I make no apologies for it anymore. I owned who I really am and I like me. I learned to like me.
Yeah.
I learned to like me. And I strive to be better each day, better than I was the day before. But I've learned to give myself grace if I'm not, because that's what each day is for, is to try again, right? So I learned to give myself grace. In the past, I wasn't always so gracious to myself, and I had to realize that if I extend grace to others, why wasn't I willing to extend it to myself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a journey that a lot of people don't realize they need to be on. And I think that's a journey a lot of people are on, of finding grace for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
My dad doesn't put it as beautifully as you did, but he said, it's not YOLO, it's YODO. Because every day you get to live another life is only one thing that's going to kill you. He's like, no, it's not that you only live once, you only die once. Every day you can live another life.
That's great. I like that. You can, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And the other thing that I learned from that is it's okay to acknowledge one's flaws. Like one of the things that I did was I had conversation with my boys about when I look back over my experiences as a parent and how I raised them and some of the rules and some of the things that I did. I did them based on number one, sort of the way that I was raised, because parenting doesn't come with a handbook, right? If I could go back, I would listen more and give them more of a voice and just sit down and went over some of the things and some of the decisions I made, explain to them where my head was and apologize. So I think it makes you become reflective, and especially once I went through COVID and I was really, really sick. One of the big things that whenever I do leave this world, whenever that is, I don't ever want them to wonder or think about, or I some of the saddest things that I hear is that I really didn't know my mom or my dad. Like they were my mom and my dad, but they really, I want them to know me as their mother, right? But I want them to know me as a woman,
Yes, that's Angela. Yeah. Yeah.
who I was as a woman,
Yeah.
right? Flawed and all. Because I think one of the things that we do as parents is we don't want our kids to see us as who we are, because then they go through life thinking they have this false illusion and they don't understand. Look, I'm pretty jacked up sometimes, but I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress, but I love you, right? And hopefully I haven't jacked you up too much.
That is the goal. That is the goal. Well, is there anything else you want to make sure you share before we say our goodbyes?
Cancer is cancer is a bitch,
Yep.
but it can be kicked in the ass. You just have to kick it with everything that you have. And I am a believer that your mental fortitude is just as important as what you bring to the table physically. So, what do I mean? I mean that do what you can to take care of yourself, because I think when your body is in good condition, it helps you. So, eat well, rest, exercise so that your physical housing is in great shape, but then also have your mental housing in order as well. And I'm not going to say that you're not going to have bad days. We all have bad days and you have some doubt. I think I expressed that, but we all have those days where we go into the valley, you just can't stay there. Surround yourself with people who are willing to tell you, girl, get your ass up and lace your gloves up.
Yep.
Not people who are just going to placate to where you are, that's willing to give you the equivalence of a slap in the face and say, look, now either you're going to fight or you're not, you know. to tell you the hard truth, because a real friend will tell you the hard truth.
Yes, you need that.
Girl, get your ass about this bed. You've been laying in this bed for 2 days. You need a shower. Let's do something. Let's do. Okay. And so whatever it is for you, but you got to bring your mental toughness to the fight too. So you have to feel empowered to know you don't have to let negative stuff stay in your space. And I don't care if it's, outside people who you don't know or people that's in your immediate circle. You can remove yourself or you can remove them from your circle. And I'm saying that because oftentimes when we hear the word or we get that first diagnosis, you get that sucker punch. It's a sucker punch, right? And so the first place we go is, oh my God, am I going to die? Okay, you got that moment.
Yeah.
But then after that, then you decide, get your hands taped up, then slide your hands into your gloves, and you got to move. Start thinking about what resources you can tap into, get all the information that you can get about your particular cancer. Like, use your resources, talk to your pharmacist and say, hey, can you go through my medication profile and tell me what should I be avoiding? All of those things help in your recovery. If they got you on steroids, you're going to be crazy. Call it, they just make you crazy.
Yeah.
So they do.
They do. I know.
They make, ooh. So, okay. So if they tell you you're going to be on steroids, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm giving you fair warning. They're going to make you crazy. And okay, your bills and things still go on. Just because you have cancer, those things don't stop. So who do you trust that you can say, so if you're single or whatever, okay, I need you. I may need you to take this over for me, or I may need you to glance over this to make sure I'm not missing anything. Right. So before you start everything, make sure you have all your affairs in order. You don't ever know what the side effects to the chemo may be.
Yeah.
You don't know. Right. People think that if they prepare, if they do things, they're giving up. No, that's just called business sense. When you go buy a car, before you pull off the lot, will they let you pull off the lot without the insurance?
No, they will not.
They will not. Okay.
It will not happen.
So it will not happen, right? So when you get your diagnosis and you get your breath back, right? All right. You need to have a medical power of attorney. You need to have a financial power of attorney. You need advanced directives. These are all things that need to be taken care of before you get one drip, 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 drip of chemo. Well, who do you want to make your medical decisions for you until you can get your shit back together? Who can pay your bills for you because you don't want to come out and you find out that you behind on your bills and stuff and you paying late fees unnecessarily because you had a bad reaction to something and you couldn't get your stuff again. Nobody can access your stuff, right? So these are all things that need to be considered. Yeah. Yes, you want the best and you want to survive and you're going to fight, but you don't know what the side effects are going to be or what's going to happen. So while you have the capacity, get all of those things in order.
I hear that. And I think that can be scary for anyone. And it can be scary if you're younger, scary if you have kids. I had to do that for the first time. Got a will at 32.
Yeah.
Advanced directives, really think like, what do I want to happen with my body? I, put together all the passwords for everything that my family would need. I had copies of things and had told like my sister, this is where they are.
Correct.
I even did some other stuff too. Like I went through my apartment and I was
hide out, get rid of all your toys. Look here. You don't want the people running across money. You be like, ooh.
I was like, okay, wait, hold on.
Yes.
I was like, yo, if I go, I don't want my mom.
Yes. Pack up all your little stuff. Put all your little.
Get your house in order.
Get your house in order. Get your house in order. Get your house in order. They be coming through like, okay. I saw that from a scene in what's the show I used to watch? The L Word.
Oh, yeah. I love that show. I love that show.
Me too. And one of the guys and his mama came through there and she was like, I was like, oh my God. Oh, I said, yeah. Get your house in order.
You ain't gonna remember me with the stuff that I keep under my bed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pack all your little stuff up. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Angela. I think everything you're saying we have very different experiences, and I feel like a lot of parts of your story resonates with me. And every as I'm listening to you, I'm kind of mad at myself because I wish I had this conversation 3 years ago. I wish,
Why?
because when I was going through what I was going through, I felt so alone. I felt so isolated. I didn't have the language or the space to talk about this in a really nuanced way, you know?
Well, that's why you're doing what you're doing. And I wish that your platform would have existed 9 years ago. I didn't have a support group and we didn't have anything like this. But everything in due season, everything in due season. And now, when brown girls or brown boys go through this, they are not alone. And that's why I didn't mind sharing my story with you. When I ran across your podcast, and I mean, I was taking in episode 1, and for 2 days, got caught up and listened to the whole season 1.
Yeah.
And after the first episode, I had to send a message to you saying, oh my God, you're onto something. I needed this 9 years ago. Because, and here's the thing why. If I have a pain in my chest or something like that, the first thing is like, oh my God, it's back. Right?
Yeah.
There are certain things that I still cannot do. And it's a remnant of the cancer. Like, I've survived. And because I'm a survivor, people think, oh, life is back to normal. It's not back to normal.
It's not.
I have a new normal.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for it. Please don't get me wrong. I am so thankful for my new normal. And in some ways, my new normal is better in a sense of who I am as a woman, right? But I can't do my crunches and my pull-ups, my cross. I can't, because I have sternal wires in my chest. I can't do that. My stamina will never be like I used to could do 4 hours of sleep and I'm good to go. Listen here, no. I never got my eyelashes back. Never. They that thick, full. I should be seeing somebody try to add some eyelashes, right? But here's what's funny: the damn hair on my legs wanted to come back. Can I have my eyelashes and the hair on my legs? I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, eyelashes went to your legs.
Like, what's really going on? I understand what you're saying, but in due season, and I think that what you're doing is outstanding. And I have shared your podcast with so many who I know have either battled cancer and still feel alone because they won the battle, but they're dealing with the aftermath of it and they don't. Because, see, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Once you get over it, people don't want to really talk to you anymore.
Facts.
They feel like you should be through talking. Like, girl, why are we still talking about this? And so what happens is people stop talking. And when they stop talking, they internalize and they have no, so it's just like they suffer in silence. And I think what your podcast does is allow us to know that, oh, so it's not just me. It's okay. Other people are feeling this way and I'm not crazy. So don't stop doing what you're doing. I'm appreciative of it. And I wanted people to feel empowered to advocate for themselves because here I was in healthcare and still almost was misdiagnosed. And had I not pushed the envelope, I may not be here, because if I would listen to him and took some Protonics, that thing could have wrapped itself around my heart or, whatever, and it would have been a different outcome.
Yep.
So when you feel like something is wrong, you keep pushing and pushing until you find someone who's willing to listen to you and get to the bottom of what's going on with you.
Even now to this day, I don't say, oh, when they found the tumor. I say, when I found my tumor. Remember when I told you something was wrong with me? Remember when I kept coming into this office? I found it. Maybe I don't own an MRI. I don't have an MRI in my bedroom. But it was me that was pushing that. And I think that sense of ownership, and we've been talking about that, knowing your body, having a voice, knowing your power to choose your physician, pushing for what you want, making plans, understanding the vision of your life, that is your power. And we all have that. We all have that.
Yes, ma'am.
Black Cancer is created, edited, and produced by me, Jody Ann Beery. Thank you so much, Angela, for sharing your story with us. To make sure that other Black cancer stories become center to how we talk about cancer, rate, subscribe. If you have Apple Podcasts, leave a review. Check out our website at blackcancer.co and on Instagram at _black_cancer. Trauma comes with endless wisdom for ourselves and those around us. Tell someone you know about Black cancer.